Hello and welcome to another edition of Addition. I'm your host, Addy Snowden. I'm a big tech product manager, mathematician, futurist, tech optimist, artist, and creator, and I'm here every week bringing you the news, the hot topics in tech, some career advice, and let you know what I'm geeked out about this week. So before we get into today's episode, you can go ahead and like this video if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. You can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Addition with Addy, Twitter at AdditionPod, and at Addy Adewusi. You can also subscribe to the Substack for this show, which gets you every single episode and YouTube episode in your email inbox. That is additionpod.substack.com. So you never miss an update. And I am accepting sponsors still. You can email me at additionpod@gmail.com. That is additionpod@gmail.com for any sponsorship opportunities. All right, so let's get into today's episode. So the hot topic that I'm going to talk about first in tech is Amazon cracking down on coffee badging. What is coffee badging, that you ask? Well, we're going to get into it. I'm going to read a quote from the article, which will explain everything. So after more than a year of quoting again, after more than a year of requiring employees to work from the home at least 3 days a week, Amazon is now considering a minimum number of hours per day to meet that mandate, according to screenshots from the internal messaging app Slack shared with the Seattle Times. The crackdown, the messages say, seems to be focused on coffee badging, a term coined in 2023 report by the video conferencing hardware company Owl Labs. Coffee badging refers to workers who pop into the office to grab a coffee and then head home, allowing them to skirt in-office requirements but still clock the appropriate number of badge swipes. The trend exists beyond Amazonians. The 2023 report found that more than half of respondents at various companies said they would use the technique. In a series of Slack messages over the last week, Amazon workers said there had been lots of talk about the new minimum and turned to one another to compare notes. The expectation is not a formal policy change, the messages said, and does not appear to be uniformly applied. End quote. Okay, so that quote again was from the article Amazon Cracks Down on Coffee Badging from the Seattle Times. So I found out about this on Instagram. There's a fellow creator who works in tech who reports on different news, and she talked about the progression from work from home to return to office to now return to office for a certain amount of time, and where is this going next? You need to stay at the office in perpetuity. I think what's really interesting about this article is that there's not a consistent requirement. There's not a blanket minimum of hours to be in the office. And my thinking is there never was. Before COVID, some people popped in and left early to pick up their kids. Sometimes a VP or someone on the leadership team could always work from home. That was part of the deal to get that talent. Like no policy has ever been blanket at any company. So, but it's really interesting that they won't define these clearly, because I think what employees and or workers want is just clarity. And so if 3 days a week in the office, there is no specific requirement as to how many hours that pertains. So I think companies forget that they're hiring smart people, and of course they're going to do the bare minimum required, especially during a time where they're not feeling strong company culture, strong company affiliation. Of course they're going to do what they can. And another thing that people aren't talking about is the fact that after COVID, teams are not all in the same city anymore. So going to the office means something completely different in 2024 than it did in, let's say, 2014. When I was in the office in the past, I was sitting with my manager, my skip level, my peers, people from different departments, everyone that I worked with was right there in the room with me, with the exception of maybe there was an engineering team that was in a different country or a different state. But my direct team was right there with me. I have had like a remote manager. It hasn't been every single person every time, but the vast majority of people that I would work with would be in the same office or building or city as me. Now in post COVID in 2024, I will speak for myself. There may be a sprinkle of people in my team in Atlanta, but my manager sits in one city, my skip level sits in another city, my director, my VP, like everyone is separated, and going to the office means hanging out with people or talking to people that happen to also sit in Atlanta. That is, and which is awesome. And I love how I can meet people from other teams and learn about different orgs. It really is great, but it doesn't have the same, it's a completely different experience as showing up in the office with my whole management chain and my whole team and seeing them every day. It's a completely different situation. So I completely understand why people are coffee badging. I think companies just need to be more clear about the return to office policy, and that's clear in the differences too. Like employees need to know, well, if marketing needs to only be in there 2 hours a day, but sales needs to be in the office 8 hours a day or 6 hours a day. Put that in writing so people can know as they navigate their careers what the different level of expectation is. It may be a way to retain employees if you have, a lower requirement of being in the office in terms of hours badged in. Like, let's just be transparent. I don't know why we're trying to hide this. I don't know what we're trying to mask here. So this is my hot topic right now. This is very top of mind with not just myself, with people around me who work at these tech companies. It's like, what is happening here? So hopefully we get some resolution, but I do think with Amazon implementing these time requirements, other companies are going to be paying attention. The article mentioned that as well. So we shall see. All right. So the next topic, which isn't necessarily in the news, but it's very much in my world, there are a lot of people who are laid off from their companies, or who knows what the circumstances are, but they're in the job market and they want that next good tech job. And for me, since I work at Google, people are messaging me wanting to get referrals to Google, wanting to have coffee chats about Google, things like that. So if you watch the previous episode, that was just in general, which Janai had helped me get on this path by like helping me with my resume and, letting me know what my options were. So I highly recommend listening to last week's episode, but there's some things that I want to add some color to this conversation because I truly do want to help people, and I want to do it as much as I can. I just need to scale this help because, I have a life, I have a demanding job, I have a burgeoning music career, which we're going to get to later. I'm married, I have a family, my part-time job can't be helping people get into Google. So I'm going to put everything here, everything I know about getting to Google in today's episode. All right, so first things first is your background and credentials. So I will say to get into Google, and everyone's gonna have a different experience. This is just my experience, and so I've also attempted to get into Google twice. The first time I made it to a final round interview, did not get the position. The second time I got the position that I'm in today, and I just celebrated 2 years. Congrats to me, and so. This is my experience. So I started in 2022. People who started in 2012 are going to have a different experience for me, okay? So the most important thing is being self-aware. You have to be real with yourself. I recommend people only apply to jobs at Google if they were the recruiter or the hiring manager, they were looking at your resume, they would say, wow, this is the exact person for the role. So if they require, XYZ if the role requires XYZ years of experience, XYZ type of software knowledge, it like your resume needs to essentially read the job description, and not in a way that you're faking it. Like, you have to be very real with yourself, and the reason why I'm saying this is because they have thousands of people applying to each job, internally and externally. So why would they take a chance on someone who may fit the job requirements when there's someone right next to them, like paper next to paper, who fits all of the requirements? And there may be like 10 of those people, since they got thousands of applicants. Okay, so you have to be really, really, really real with yourself. But the good news is the company is so huge and does so many different things that you can find a role that actually fits your experience. Like, for example, if you had a mix of hospitality, sales, and operations experience, I'm sure that there is a sales team that specializes in the hospitality industry and they need an ops manager. You have to think like that. You really do. And if that is hard for you to think about or workshop, I highly recommend working with a career coach. I worked with a career coach myself before I got into Google, and this was when I was already working at Microsoft. Okay, you have to take this really seriously, because it's like college and saying you only want to go to Harvard. Like, if you're really putting all of your eggs in the Google baskets, you have to create your whole life around getting into Google. So first, make sure your background and credentials on your resume are an exact fit for whatever position that you're applying for. Next, let's get into referrals, okay? I did not get a referral for my position. I never received a referral for my position. And I had several people in my network who worked at Google at the time, and I did not ask them for a referral. It's not because I had lack of ability to get a referral. I just didn't. I didn't get a referral. So if all of you guys out there who think that a referral is a guaranteed interview, that is false. I'm breaking this myth right now. Every single person that I have submitted as a referral, and I've submitted at least over a dozen referrals from all sorts of companies with all sorts of backgrounds, big, small, startup, big tech, FANG, etc. Not one has made it to the phone screen. Not one. And these are people that I've worked with in the past that have, good years of experience, that have master's degrees. They did not get past, they just got a rejection email. They did not get to talk on the phone with anybody, nothing, not even the phone screen, okay? So you have to realize that so much of this is randomness and luck, and the referral is not going to change anything. And that's not just because I'm referring. There's a whole, I happen to know a community of people who shared their stats on how many referrals they've given versus how many got an interview. Out of probably about 50 people that shared their stats based on referrals to interview, there was maybe like a couple people who got their referral to interview stage. So you got to take these referrals off a pedestal. If you're qualified for the position and it's the right place and the right time and the right team, 100% you're going to make it to that phone screen. Google wants the perfect person for the job. And if you're the perfect person for the job, you're going to move along in the process. Okay. Next, role selection. I kind of touched on this earlier. Make sure the role that you're applying to is almost an exact fit of your background. Even better if it's a lateral move. Like if you're a senior manager, look for senior manager positions. Don't think you're going to jump and go from senior manager to director. Like Google's only going to hire people who have been at the previous level at their previous company or above for a director level. So you would need to either be like a director, senior director, VP to even be considered for a director position. And that's not company policy. This is just what I've seen. They want people who've done it before, because the scale and global level of how Google is operating, if you're a director at a startup, that's going to be a completely different situation. So I highly recommend you look, if you're coming to Google, make it a lateral move. Don't see it as a step up move. You may even need to go backwards. For a lot of people, that is the case. They were a director at their past position, another large, big tech company, and they may have a team of multiple people, 4, 5, 6 people. They will come to Google and be an IC, an independent contributor, with no reports and maybe 3, 4 levels away from director, because they want to work here. So you got to also remember that those are the people you're competing with, people who are willing to take a dramatic title decrease, because it may not translate to pay, maybe a pay increase, even though they got a title decrease. Those are the people that you're competing with. So again, you got to be really real with yourself, okay? Second, you can put in 3, or I don't know what number I'm on. I said second, but who knows? So you can put in 3 applications per month per email. So if you're using an email, let's say your Gmail, I know most people have multiple emails, you can apply to 3 roles per month. That's it. So if you find a 4th role that happens to be your exact fit, I would recommend using a different email so you can apply, as opposed to waiting. But I like that Google does this, because it prevents people from just spamming and just putting the same resume across like 1,000 jobs, because maybe they'll get lucky. So be mindful of those 3 roles that you apply to. Again, think about your background, think about your experience, your credentials, your title, etc. And lastly, I'll talk about recruiters. So I do highly, 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 highly recommend not reaching out to recruiters directly on LinkedIn. There's a whole formal process to prevent bias and favoritism that hiring teams have to go through to get into the company. So this is not the kind of place where you can just like send a connection request on LinkedIn and say, hey, I heard you hire on this team. Like, can you look at my resume? Like, that's just not going to happen, because it goes against our policies. So, and also, if you are lucky enough to get someone to refer you, don't ask them to email the hiring manager, because that may actually take you out of the running completely, because it's going to show favoritism. So this is truly, 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 I would say, on some level, a meritocracy. Like it's all about your resume. So go back to last week's episode and listen to what Junaid says about your resume. Like, is your resume even formatted to pass the applicant tracking system, like that companies use in general? Like, make sure you get that together. If you can afford it, get a career coach, and with your number 1 goal of getting into a job at Google, like it really needs that level of focus. I mentioned on last week's podcast, I even started Addition to help me with my resume, like just to add to my resume, to really show the whole person that I am. Like, that's how serious it has to be. And I have to, in thinking about it even further, like my whole life, really, I had been preparing for this role, like in that, based on the type of major I chose, the type of college I went to, the type of high school that I was fortunate to go to. People don't just randomly show up in some places, and like there's luck, like so much of it is luck. And I just happened to be on a path that led me to a place like Google. So just know that if you're really just thinking about Google now, you're starting from 0, and then you need to start building that path for yourself. So, and what's great about starting from 0 is that you can look at the jobs on the Google Careers website, look for the type of role that really resonates with you, and then work backwards. Start building that experience. Like, everyone that I know at Google has started their path to Google's like 10 years ago, if not more. I went to an info session for Google my senior year of college in 2014, right? And I didn't start applying to Google until, let's say, 2021. So no one is here by accident. Yes, luck has to do with it more in terms of timing and market timing. Another thing that I would add is think about the teams, like watch the news, like don't apply to an org that has news talking about layoffs or something like that. Like some of this is just common sense, but I wanted to share my piece because I really, really want to help people. And this is the best way I can help people right now. And I will no longer be doing referrals to Google because I don't see it actually helping anyone's candidacy. And I think it creates an element of hope and excitement. And literally within a day, it goes back to being crushed and being rejected. So I don't want to be part of that. I don't want to give people false hope. The cards are going to fall where they're may. And so just put your best resume forward. Okay. All right. So that kind of ties in to the career segment, which so we're going back to the 15 commitments of conscious leadership. I will have a summary as well as the link to the book in the show notes. I highly recommend reading this book to help you navigate your career. It's helped me tremendously. So the commitment is practicing integrity. I commit to the masterful practice of integrity, including acknowledging all authentic feelings, expressing the unarguable truth, keeping my agreements, and taking 100% responsibility. So it talks about 4 things here: authentic feelings, unarguable truth, keeping my agreements, and taking 100% responsibility. So I see this commitment as committing to practice in combination all of the previous commitments. So authentic feelings, remember going back to the feeling all feelings, where this isn't about just like expressing your feelings. This is breathing through your feelings, identifying where your feelings are living in your body, and then breathing them out and doing that again and again until you can let go. Next is the unarguable truth. This means you're not just making blanket claims like, I don't think this presentation is going to work or look good. You have to make claims that are unarguable. Like, I had the thought that this presentation needs some refining. That is an unarguable truth because no one can tell you that you didn't have that thought, but you can't just say this presentation sucks. Next is keeping my agreements. Like if I make a promise I'm going to have you that paper in 2 weeks, I need to do everything I can to keep that agreement. And at the point that I know that I'm not going to be able to keep that agreement, I need to let that person know. And that I said 2 weeks, but it's actually going to be 3 weeks, which also rolls into taking 100% responsibility. If I messed up, I need to take responsibility for messing up. If I miscommunicated, if I heard something wrong, if I didn't ask for clarification, I'm going to take 100% of my responsibility, but I'm not going to take other people's responsibility. It's my responsibility. I had a part, but everyone else played a part too. All right, so that's the career segment. So what am I geeked out about this week? If you follow me on social media, this should not be a surprise. I'm obviously geeked out about the fact that I released my first single, Stiletto Cinderella. It's streaming on Apple Music, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube Music. You can use it as an audio on TikTok. You can use it as an audio on Instagram as well. I'm still figuring out how to make it an audio on YouTube, which is frustrating because I want to use it. I'm not uploading shorts anymore because I can't use my music. That's the whole reason why I made my song. But yeah, I'll talk a little bit about why I made it and how. So I am always playing around with the AI chatbots, and I got my new Mac Studio, obviously. And so I started asking, Gemini, how do I make music with a GarageBand? Like, just like that. And so Previously, I would have had to watch YouTube videos that may be like 30 minutes to an hour long, maybe coherent, maybe not. Maybe I would do a Google search and see if I can find a blog post. But with AI, I could say, I really like music like this song, XYZ song. How do I make that in GarageBand? And I did. It took 4 days. From start, and I created the beat, wrote the lyrics, which I had written when I was 18. And I had just had it saved in a journal. So I did the beat, and then I recorded the vocals. The longest part was recording the vocals because I am not Mariah Carey. And so I had to figure out how to sound like decent enough. But yeah, so it took 4 days, and I used DistroKid to get on the streaming platforms. That took 1 day. And now I got a song. So I've been promoting it, and I've been getting a lot of positive feedback. Thank you if you've already listened. If you haven't listened, at the end of this episode, stick around because we're going to go straight into the song, both the lyric version and the instrumental version. So I'm just geeked out about the fact that with AI, I can learn anything, and I don't need to hire a teacher anymore. I have an AI teacher, and it's way more convenient. So thank you to Google's Gemini for allowing me to release my first single. All right, so that's all I have this week. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Check back next week for the next episode. Bye. This is not your ghetto Cinderella. This is the Stiletto Cinderella. I kill 'em with my flow in the back like gold yellow. Your girl don't know about me, you better tell her. I ain't got a car, but I ride a bike. Best believe when I'm riding, I still got my spikes. How many girls like me you don't like? How many girls like me you don't like? This is not your ghetto Cinderella. This is the Stiletto Cinderella. How many girls like me you don't like? How many girls like me you don't like? Riding round Atlanta in a diamond bag. Yes, I got your money and I still got my stacks. How many girls like me you don't like? 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 How many girls like me you don't like?